A summary of the 8th topic. In the 7th topic, we questioned numerous levels of beings about the resurrection of the dead, but curtailed the discussion because since the replies given by the creatures' names afforded such powerful certainty, they left no need for further questions. Now, in this topic are summarized 100th of the benefits of belief in the hereafter, including those which result in happiness in this world and in the next. The Qur'an of miraculous exposition leaves no need for further explanation concerning the happiness of the hereafter, so we refer the subject to the Qur'an. And leaving the explanations of worldly happiness to the Risale-i Nur, here we shall describe in summary form 3 or 4 out of hundreds of results of belief in the hereafter which look to man's individual life and social life. The first, just as, contrary to other living beings, man has relations with his home, so he has relations with the world, and just as he has relations with his relatives, so, by nature, he has earnest relations with mankind. And just as he desires temporary permanence in this world, so he passionately desires immortality in the realm of eternity. And just as he strives to meet the need of his stomach for food, so he is by nature compelled to strive to provide for the stomachs of his mind, heart, spirit, and humanity. He has such hopes and desires that nothing apart from eternal happiness can satisfy them. As is mentioned in the 10th word, even when small, I asked my imagination, "Do you want to live for 1,000,000 years and rule the world, but then cease to exist, or to live forever but have an ordinary and difficult existence?" I saw that my imagination wanted the latter, feeling pain at the first, and said, "I want to live forever, even if in hell." Thus, since the pleasures of this world do not satisfy the imaginative faculty, which is a servant of human nature, man's comprehensive nature is certainly attached to eternity. For man, therefore, who despite being afflicted with these boundless hopes and desires, as capital has only an insignificant faculty of will and absolute poverty, belief in the hereafter is a treasure of such strength and sufficiency, is such a means of pleasure and happiness, source of help, refuge, and means of consolation in the face of the endless sorrows of this world, and is such a fruit and benefit that if the life of this world were to be sacrificed on the way of gaining it, it would still be cheap. Its second fruit and benefit which looks to man's personal life. This is a consequence of great importance which is explained in the 3rd topic and about which is a footnote in a guide for youth. Man's greatest and most constant anxiety is his entering the place of execution, that it is a graveyard, the same as his friends and relations have entered it. Wretched man who is ready to sacrifice his very soul for a single friend thinks of the thousands, millions, or thousands of millions of friends who have been eliminated and have parted for all eternity and suffers torments worse than hell. Just at that point, belief in the hereafter comes, opens his eyes, and raises the veil. It tells him, "Look." He looks with belief, and seeing that those friends have been saved from eternal death and decay, and are awaiting him happily in a luminous world, he receives a pleasure of the spirit that intimates the pleasures of paradise. Sufficing with the explanations and proofs of this consequence in the Risale-i Nur, we cut this short here. A 3rd benefit pertaining to personal life. Man's superiority over other living beings and his high rank are in respect of his elevated qualities, comprehensive abilities, universal worship, and his extensive spheres of existence. However, the virtues he acquires like zeal, love, brotherhood, and humanity are to the extent of the fleeting present, which is squeezed between the past and the future, which are both non-existent and dead and black. For example, he loves and serves his father, brother, wife, nation, and country, whom he formerly did not know, and after parting from them will never see again. He would very rarely be able to achieve complete loyalty and sincerity, and his virtues and perfections would diminish proportionately. Then, just as because of his intelligence, he is about to fall headlong from being the highest of the animals to the lowest and most wretched, belief in the hereafter comes to his assistance. It expands the present, as constricting as the grave, so that it encompasses the past and future and is as broad as the world, and shows the bounds of existence to stretch from pre-eternity to post-eternity. Thinking of his father being in the realm of bliss and world of spirits, and the fraternity of his brothers continuing to eternity, and knowing that his wife will be a beautiful companion in paradise also, he will love and respect them, be kindly and assist them. He will not exploit the important duties which are for relationships in that broad sphere of life and existence for the worthless matters of this world, with its petty hatreds and interests. His good qualities and attainments will advance to the degree he is successful in being earnestly loyal and truly sincere, and his humanity will increase. Although he does not receive the pleasure from life that a sparrow receives, he becomes the most eminent and happy guest in the universe, superior to all the animals and the best loved and most acceptable servants of the universe's owner. This consequence has also been elucidated with proofs in the Risale-i Nur, so here we suffice with this. A fourth benefit of belief in the hereafter, which looks to man's social life. A summary of this result is set forth in the 9th ray of the Risale-i Nur. It is as follows. Children, which form a quarter of mankind, can live a human existence only through belief in the hereafter and sustain their human capacity. They otherwise live only childish, empty existences, blunting their grievous pains with trifling playthings. For the effect of the constant deaths around them of children like themselves on their sensitive minds and weak hearts, which in the future will nurture far-reaching desires, and their vulnerable spirits make their minds and lives into instruments of torture. But then, through instruction in belief in the hereafter, in place of their anxieties and the playthings behind which they hid, so as not to see those deaths, they feel a joy and expansion and say, "My brother or my friend has died and become a bird in paradise. He is flying around and enjoying himself better than we are. And my mother has died, but she has gone to divine mercy. She will again take me into her embrace in paradise, and I shall see her again." They may live in a state befitting humanity. It is only in belief in the hereafter that the elderly, who form another quarter of mankind, can find consolation in the face of the close extinction of their lives and their entering the soil and their fine and lovable worlds coming to an end. Those kindly, venerable fathers and devoted, tender mothers would otherwise feel such a disturbance of the spirits and tumult of the heart that the world would become a despairing prison for them and life a ghastly torture. But then, belief in the hereafter says to them, "Don't worry. You have an immortal youth, a shining, endless life awaits you. You will be joyfully reunited with the children and relatives you have lost. All your good deeds have been preserved and you will receive your reward." It affords them such solace and joy that were they to experience old age 100 times over all at the same time, it would not cause them despair. 1/3 of mankind is formed by the youth. With their turbulent emotions, the youths are not always able to control their bold intelligences and are overcome by their passions. If then they lose their faith in the hereafter and do not recall the torments of hell, it puts in danger the property and honor of the upright people in society and the peace and self-respect of the weak and elderly. One youth may destroy the happiness of a contented home for 1 minute's pleasure, then pay the penalty in prison for 4 or 5 years, degenerating into a wild animal. If belief in the hereafter comes to his assistance, and he swiftly comes to his senses, saying, "It's true, the government informers can't see me, and I can hide from them, but the angels of a glorious monarch who has a prison like hell see me and are recording all my evil deeds. I'm not free and independent, I'm a traveler charged with duties. One day I too will be old and weak." He suddenly starts to feel a sympathy and respect for those he wanted to cruelly assault. This too is explained with proofs in the Risale-i Nur, so deeming that sufficient, we here cut it short. Another important section of mankind are the sick, the oppressed, the disaster-stricken like us, the poor, and the life prisoners. If belief in the hereafter does not come to their aid, death, of which they are continuously reminded by illness, unavenged wrongs, the arrogant treachery of the oppressor, from whom they cannot save their honor, the terrible despair of having lost their property, or children in serious disasters, the distress at having to suffer the terms of prison for 5 or 10 years because of a minute or two, or an hour or two of pleasure, this surely make the world into a prison for such unfortunates, and life into agonizing torment. But if belief in the hereafter comes to their assistance, they suddenly breathe freely, and according to the degree of their belief, their distress, despair, anxiety, anger, and desire for vengeance abate, sometimes partially, sometimes entirely. I can even say that if belief in the hereafter had not helped me and some of my brothers in this fearsome calamity of our being imprisoned for no reason, to stand it for one day would have been as grievous as death and driven us to resign from life. But only thanks be to God, despite suffering the distress of my brothers, whom I love as much as my life, as well as my own, in addition to the weeping and sorrow of thousands of copies of the Risale-i Nur and my gilded, decorated, valuable books, which I love as much as my eyes, and although I could never stand the slightest insult or to be dominated, I swear that the light and strength of belief in the hereafter afforded me the patience, endurance, solace, and steadfastness. Indeed, it fills me with enthusiasm to gain greater reward in the profitable, instructive exertions of this ordeal, for as I said at the beginning of this treatise, I knew myself to be in a good madrasa or school worthy of the title of Madrasa Yusufiya, School of Joseph. If it were not for the occasional sickness and irritability arising from old age, I would have worked at my lessons even better and with greater ease of mind. However, we have strayed from the subject. I hope it will be forgiven. Also, everyone's home is a small world for him and even a small paradise. If belief in the hereafter is not at the basis of the happiness of that home, the members of the family will suffer anguish and anxiety to the extent of their compassion, love, and attachment. Their paradise will either turn into hell, or it will numb their minds with amusements and dissipation. Like the ostrich, who sees the hunter but can neither fly nor escape, and sticks its head in the sand so as not to be seen, they plunge their heads into heedlessness so that death, decline, and separation do not spot them. They find a way out by temporarily blocking out their feelings in lunatic fashion. Because, for example, the mother trembles constantly at seeing her children, for whom she would sacrifice her soul, exposed to dangers, while the children all the time feel sorrow and fear at being unable to save their father and brother from unceasing calamities. Thus, in the upheavals of this worldly life, the supposedly happy life of the family loses its happiness in many respects, and the relations and closeness in this brief life do not result in true loyalty, heartfelt sincerity, disinterested service, and love. Good character declines proportionately and is even lost. Whereas, if belief in the hereafter enters that home, it illuminates it completely and its members have sincere respect, love, and compassion for each other, are loyal, and disregard each other's faults in the measure not of their relations, closeness, kindness, and love in this brief life, but of their continuation in the realm of the hereafter, in everlasting happiness, and their good character increases accordingly. The happiness of true humanity starts to unfold in that home. Since this is elucidated with proofs in the Risale-i Nur, we cut this short here. Towns are also households for their inhabitants. If belief in the hereafter does not govern among the members of that large family, vices like malice, self-interest, false pretenses, selfishness, artificiality, hypocrisy, bribery, and deception will dominate, displacing sincerity, cordiality, virtue, zeal, self-sacrifice, seeking God's pleasure, and the reward of the hereafter, which are bases of good conduct and morality. Anarchy and savagery will govern under the superficial order and humanity, poisoning the life of the town. The children will become troublemakers, the youth will take to drink, the strong will embark on oppression, and the elderly start to weep. By analogy, the country is a household, and the fatherland, the home of the national family. If belief in the hereafter rules in these broad homes, true respect, earnest compassion, disinterested love, mutual assistance, honest service, and social relations, unhypocritical charity, virtue, modest greatness, and excellence will all start to develop. It says to the children, "Give up messing around, there is paradise to be won," and teaches them self-control through instruction in the Qur'an. It says to the youth, "There is hellfire, give up your drunkenness," and brings them to their senses. It says to the oppressor, "There is severe torment, you will receive a blow," and makes them bow to justice. It says to the elderly, "Awaiting you is everlasting happiness in the hereafter, far greater than all the happiness you have lost here, and immortal youth, try to win them." It turns their tears into laughter. It shows its favorable effects in every group, particular and universal, and illuminates them. Sociologists and moralists who were concerned with the social life of mankind should take special note. If the rest of the thousands of benefits and advantages of belief in the hereafter are compared with the 5 or 6 we have alluded to, it will be understood that it is only belief that is the means of happiness in this world and the next, and in the lives of both. Deeming sufficient the powerful replies to the flimsy doubts concerning bodily resurrection described in the 28th word of the Risale-i Nur, and in others of its treatises, we merely make the following brief indication. The most comprehensive mirror of the divine names lies in corporeality. The richest and most active center of the divine aims in the creation of the universe lies in corporeality. The greatest variety of the multifarious dominical bounties lies in corporeality. The greatest multiplicity of the seeds of the supplications and thanks man offers to the Creator through the tongues of his needs again lies in corporeality. And the greatest diversity of the seeds of the non-physical and spirit worlds also lies in corporeality. By analogy with this, since hundreds of universal truths are centered in corporeality, in order to multiply corporeality and make it manifest the above truths on the face of the earth, with awesome activity and speed, the all-wise Creator clothes the successive caravans of beings in existence and sends them to that exhibition. Then he discharges them and sends others in their place, constantly making the factory of the universe run. Weaving corporeal products, he makes the earth into a seedbed of the hereafter and paradise. In fact, in order to gratify man's physical stomach, he listens to and accepts the prayer for immortality his stomach makes through the tongue of disposition, affording it the greatest importance, and in order to answer it, prepares in corporeality incalculable numbers of innumerable sorts and kinds of artistic foods and precious bounties, all affording different pleasures. This demonstrates self-evidently and without doubt that in the hereafter the most numerous and various of the pleasures of paradise will be corporeal, and that the bounties of the eternal abodes of bliss, which everyone wants and is familiar with, will be corporeal. Is it at all possible that the most compassionate, all-powerful one, the all-knowing and munificent one, who accepts the prayer offered through the tongue of disposition by the common stomach, and gratifying it with infinitely miraculous physical foods, always replies, in fact, intentionally and without chance, would not accept the numerous, general prayers of man, who is the most important result of the universe, the wise grant of the earth, and the creature's choice, being and worshipper, which he offers through the supreme stomach of humanity for universal, elevated corporeal pleasures in the eternal realm, which he always desires, and with which he is familiar, and which by nature he wants, that he should not respond in fact with bodily resurrection, and not gratify him eternally. Should he hear the buzz of the fly, and not hear the crashing thunder? Should he equip a common soldier to perfection and ignore the army, giving it no importance? To do so would be impossible and absurd. Yes, in accordance with the explicit statement of the verse, there will be there all that the souls could desire, all that the eyes could delight in. Man will experience in paradise in fitting form the physical pleasures with which he is most familiar and samples of which he has tasted in this world. The rewards for the sincere thanks and particular worship each of his members, like the tongue, eye, and ear, offers, will be given through physical pleasures particular to those members. The Qur'an of miraculous exposition describes the physical pleasures so explicitly it is impossible not to accept the apparent meaning and to make forced interpretations of them. The fruits and results of life in the hereafter, then, show that, just as the reality and needs of the stomach, one of the human members, are decisive evidence for the existence of food, so the reality and perfections of man and his innate needs and desire for eternity, and his abilities and potentialities which demand the above-mentioned consequences and benefits of belief in the hereafter, are certain evidence for the hereafter and paradise and eternal physical pleasures, and they testify to their certain existence. Similarly, the reality of the universe's perfections and its meaningful creational science and all its truths connected with the above human truths are evidence for the certain existence of the realm of the hereafter, the resurrection of the dead, and the opening up of heaven and hell. This has been brought so brilliantly in the Risale-i Nur, and particularly in the 10th, 28th, both stations, and 29th words, and the 9th ray, and the supplication of the 3rd ray, that they leave no room for doubt. Referring readers to them, we cut short this long story here. The Qur'anic descriptions of hell are also so clear and explicit they leave no need for further description. Nevertheless, referring to the Risale-i Nur detailed explanation of one or 2 points which dispel one or 2 feeble doubts, we shall set forth a very brief summary. First point: the thought of hell and the fear it induces does not dispel the pleasures of the above fruits of belief, for boundless divine mercy says to the fearful man, "Come to me." Enter the door of repentance, then the existence of hell will not frighten you, but make known completely the pleasures of paradise, and avenge you and all creatures whose rights have been transgressed, and give you enjoyment. If you are so submerged in misguidance, you cannot extricate yourself. The existence of hell is still immeasurably better than eternal annihilation, and is also a sort of kindness for the disbelievers. For men, and even animals with young, receive pleasure at the pleasure and happiness of their relatives, offspring, and friends, and in one respect are happy. Therefore, O atheists, because of your misguidance, you will either tumble into non-being at your eternal execution, or you will enter hell. As for non-existence, which is absolute evil, since it consists of the annihilation together with yourself of all your relatives, forebears, and descendants whom you love and at whose happiness you are to an extent happy. It causes pain to your spirit, heart, and inner nature severer than 1,000 hells. For if there were no hell, there would be no paradise. By reason of your disbelief, everything falls into non-existence. If you go to hell and remain within the sphere of existence, those you love and your relatives will be happy in paradise, or will be the recipients of compassion in some respects within the spheres of existence. This means you should support the idea of hell existing. To oppose it is to support non-existence, which is to support the elimination of innumerable friends' happiness. Yes, hell is an awesome, majestic, existent land which performs the wise and just function of being the place of incarceration of the glorious sovereign of the sphere of existence, which is pure good. It performs numerous other functions besides that of prison, and fulfills many purposes and carries out many duties connected with the eternal realm. It is also the awe-inspiring habitation of many living creatures like the angels of hell. Second point, there is no contradiction between the existence and ghastly torments of hell and infinite mercy, true justice, and wisdom with its balance and absence of waste. Indeed, mercy, justice, and wisdom require its existence. For to punish a tyrant who tramples the rights of 1,000 innocents, and to kill a savage animal who tears to pieces 100 cowed animals is for the oppressed 1,000-fold mercy within justice. While to pardon the tyrant and leave the savage beast free is for hundreds of wretches 100-fold pitilessness in place of that single act of misplaced mercy. Similarly, the absolute disbeliever is one of those who will enter hell. For through his disbelief and denial he both transgresses the rights of the divine names, and through denying the testimony of beings to those names, he transgresses their rights, and by denying the elevated duties of glorification of creatures before the divine names he violates their rights, and through denying their being mirrors too, and responding with worship to the manifestation of divine dominicality, which is the purpose of the universe's creation and a reason for its existence and continuance, he transgresses their rights in a way. His disbelief is therefore a crime and wrong of such vast proportions it may not be forgiven and deserves the threat of the verse. God forgives not the sin of joining other gods with him. Not to cast him into hell would comprise innumerable instances of mercilessness to innumerable claimants whose rights had been transgressed in place of a single misplaced act of mercy. Just as those claimants demand the existence of hell, so do divine dignity and majesty and tremendousness and perfection most certainly demand it. Yes, if a worthless rebel who assaults the people says to the proud ruler of the place, "You can't put me in prison," affronting his dignity, if there is not a prison in the town, the ruler will have one made just to throw the ill-mannered wretch into it. In just the same way, through his disbelief, the absolute disbeliever affronts seriously the dignity of divine glory, and through his denial offends the splendor of his power, and through his aggression disturbs the perfection of his dominicality. Even if there were not many things necessitating the functions of hell, and many reasons for and instances of wisdom in its existence, it is the mark of such dignity and glory to create a hell for disbelievers such as that, and to cast them into it. Moreover, even the nature of disbelief makes known hell. Yes, just as if the true nature of belief were to be embodied, it would with its pleasures take on the form of a private paradise, and in this respect give secret news of paradise. So, as is proved with evidences in the Risale-i Nur, and is also alluded to in the previous topics, disbelief, and especially absolute disbelief, and dissembling, and apostasy are the cause of such dark and awful pains and spiritual torments that if they were to be embodied, they would become a private hell for the apostate and in this way tell of the greater hell in concealed manner. The tiny truths in the seedbed of this world produce shoots in the hereafter. Thus, this poisonous seed indicates that particular tree of Zakkum, saying, I am its origin. For the unfortunate who bears me in his heart, my fruit is a private sample of that Zakkum tree. Since this belief is aggression against innumerable rights, it is certainly an infinite crime and deserves infinite punishment. Human justice considers a sentence of 15 years imprisonment, nearly 8 million minutes, to be justice for 1 minute's murder and conformable with general rights and interests. Therefore, since one instance of this belief is the equivalent of 1,000 murders, to suffer torments for nearly 8,000 million minutes for 1 minute's absolute disbelief is in conformity with that law of justice. A person who passes a year of his life in disbelief deserves punishment for close on 2,880,000 million minutes and manifests the meaning of the verse, they will dwell therein forever. However, the all-wise Qur'an's miraculous descriptions of heaven and hell and the proofs of their existence in the Risale-i Nur, a Qur'anic commentary which proceeds from the Qur'an, leave no need for others. As is shown by numerous verses like, they reflect on the creation of the heavens and earth, saying, O our sustainer, indeed, you have not created these in vain. Glory be unto you, and protect us from the torment of the fire. O our sustainer, avert from us the torment of hell. Indeed, its torment is a grievous affliction, and evil it is as a resting place and abode, and indicated by foremost God's noble messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, and all the prophets and people of reality always repeating in their supplications, preserve us from hellfire, deliver us from hellfire, save us from hellfire, which due to their revelations and illuminations for them was certain, the most momentous question facing mankind is to be saved from hell. Hell is a vast, awesome, and supremely important cosmic truth which some of the people of illumination and witnessing and those who investigate the realities have observed, and seeing some of its distillations and shadows have cried out in terror, preserve us from the fire. Yes, the confrontation and interpenetration of good and evil in the universe, and pain and pleasure, light and darkness, heat and cold, beauty and ugliness, and guidance and misguidance represent a vast instance of wisdom. For if there were no evil, good would not be known. If there were no pain, pleasure would not be understood. Light without darkness would lack all importance. The degrees of heat are realized through cold. Through ugliness, a single instance of beauty becomes 1,000 instances, and thousands of varying degrees of beauty come into existence. If there were no hell, many of the pleasures of paradise would remain concealed. By analogy with this, in one respect everything may be known through its opposite, and a single truth produce numerous shoots and become numerous truths. Since these intermingled beings pour from this transitory realm into the eternal realm, surely just as things like good, pleasure, light, beauty, and belief are poured into paradise, so harmful matters like evil, pain, darkness, ugliness, and disbelief flow into hell, and the floods of this continuously agitated universe are emptied into those two pools. Referring you to the elusive points at the end of the wondrous 29th word, we curtail this discussion here. My fellow students here in the school of Joseph, the easiest way to be saved from that dreadful, everlasting prison is to profit from our worldly prison, and besides being saved from the many sins we are bound to refrain from, by repenting for our former sins and performing the obligatory worship, to make every hour of our prison life here the equivalent of a day's worship. This is the best opportunity we may have to be saved from that eternal prison and to win luminous paradise. If we miss this opportunity, Our lives in the hereafter will weep the same as our lives here are weeping, and we shall receive the slap of the verse. He has lost this world and the hereafter.